I want you to think about your last conversation you had and if you noticed anything out of the norm or if you would change anything about that conversation. Hi, I'm Jillian Hardt and I'm going to be discussing the expectancy violations theory. This happens to be my favorite theory so far because I feel like this theory really affects my everyday life and it's something I tend to think about and notice often. I'm going to talk a little bit about the territories, the threat thresholds, the arousals, and the rewards. The main idea of the expectancy violations theory is the way people enter an interaction and they already have an expectation of what's going to happen. And this theory tends to correlate to personal space. Personal space is kind of like an unspoken rule, but it's this invisible volume of space that's surrounding a person, which is their preferred distance from others. And there's actually a study of the personal distance, like space distances. Intimate's about 0 to 18 inches, personal's 18 to 4 feet, social's 4 to 10 feet, and public is 10 and up feet. And then there's 3 different types of territories. There's primary, secondary, and public. Primary is things you own. So my phone is an example. So if I set my phone down and somebody grabs it and starts looking on it, that's a violation of my territory. And then there's secondary territory, which is a personal connection or affiliation you have with an object. So in the beginning of every semester, when you walk into a classroom, you tend to pick a seat that you think is best, and you sit there every day. And it becomes your unassigned seat. And when you come into class one day and you see someone sitting in your unassigned seat, it feels like a violation of your territory. And then public territory is just the open spaces for everyone. And then there's other variables that come into play, which are not always verbal. So some tend to be nonverbal, like facial expressions, touching, and eye contact. And even though these things are nonverbal, they can still be a violation. So you can, you have like, say your facial expressions are not so nice, or you're smiling too much when you shouldn't be. And then touching, you could like overly touch someone during conversation. And then eye contact, you could have too much or too little. And then another main concept of this theory has to do with your threat threshold. Threat threshold is the amount of tolerance a person has for a distance violation. So someone like me, I have a very low threat threshold, which means I don't really like when people touch me during conversation, and I have to have my own personal space when talking to someone. So if you have a high threat threshold, that means you don't really mind if someone touches you, or you don't mind if someone's standing too close to you. And then, so this leads to the idea of arousal. And it relates to the threat threshold because it's basically your reaction to the encounter. So it means you can have an increased interest, or you gain attention due to the violation of expectations. This can happen in 2 ways, cognitive or physical. Cognitive is the mental awareness of a violation. So when you think in your head like, oh my God, why is this person standing so close to me? That's your cognitive arousal. And then physical is your body's reaction to the violation. So an example is like, so if someone's talking to you that you're kind of interested in, your heart might beat really fast. And then another example is like, say someone steps in really close, your body instantly takes a step back. That would be your physical arousal. And then comes the communication reward valence. For short, it's CRV. And the sum which is the sum of positive and negative characteristics of a person and their ability to reward and punish you in the future. And then violation valence is VV is short for, is the positive or negative assessment of an unexpected behavior. So this could be caused by your attraction or personal relationship. And your overall reaction of the conversation will override the CRV and the VV when assessing an ambiguous violation. And then lastly is your responses to the violation. And this can happen in 2 ways. You can compensate or you could reciprocate. Compensate is balancing the violation. So say someone steps in really close. When talking to you, you try to balance it out, so you step back. And then if you reciprocate, it means you do as they do. So if they move closer in during conversation, you move a little closer as well. So that concludes the expectancy violations theory. And during your next conversation, I want you to think about all these factors. Thanks for listening.